Hey everybody, welcome to Transforming with Tracy. Today I want to talk about dairy and specifically health effects as related to dairy. And I'm going to tell you a little backstory about myself, about my sons, and a few other people that I know, and give you a few statistics and facts and things like that. Most of it I'm going to let you guys do your own research because the information is all out there and you can get it from the government website where they have all the studies that will show you how who funded the studies. This is very important. Whenever you're looking up information, you need to find out who funded the study that you are getting your statistics from. Super, super important because every industry will fund their own studies. So, for example, if there is a study out there that tells you eggs are healthy, it was funded by the Egg Board. They actually get censored quite a bit in their ads. You may notice that in more recent years, eggs are not touted as a healthy food. They will say everything else great about them, but not tell you that they're healthy because they're not allowed to, because they're not healthy. So they can't say that anymore. And any statistic you find telling you they are healthy is going to be funded by the Egg Board. So always do your own research. Don't just take my word for it. I'm going to share with you my experience. I'm going to share with you what I know, but I encourage you to find out for yourself. Study this for yourself. It's your health. It's up to you to take care of you and to know everything you can about staying healthy for as long as possible. So please do your research. So I want to talk today about dairy. And I discovered that I was lactose intolerant 17 years ago, something like that. I had issues my whole life. I was celiac and didn't know it, but also 80% of celiacs happen to be lactose intolerant. And really 80% of the world's adults are lactose intolerant. It's just not something that a human being is meant to tolerate. And so we lose the ability to tolerate it over time, and especially when it's not necessary for growth, which is why most adults in the world become intolerant of it. But that's just lactose, not dairy altogether, but specifically lactose. However, dairy is in the top two most allergenic foods in the standard American diet or the Western diet. Highly, highly allergenic. Many people have bad reactions to dairy in some way, whether that's lactose intolerance, whether that's complete dairy intolerance, whether you break out in hives or get a skin rash or, vomit or get migraines. It causes a host of problems, and people don't always connect that dairy is the root cause because not everything is acute. Like if you eat something and if you're allergic to peanuts, so you eat a peanut, your throat starts to close up immediately. Clearly you're allergic to peanuts and you shouldn't eat them anymore because they might kill you, right? And you get that immediately. Or for me, when I eat gluten, I have an acute reaction within a few hours of eating it. Very, very sick. It's clearly obvious what the cause was. And so it's easy to connect that, especially now that I know what it is, because for years it was a slower, I don't want to go off down a rabbit hole, but gluten allergy, celiac disease will get worse over time. So the longer you let it go that you're not eliminating the gluten, the more systems in your body that get affected and the more acute your symptoms become, which is what happened to me. But so when it comes to dairy, so I discovered I was lactose intolerant, and I would still add as much as I could dairy, lactose-free dairy into my diet because I just loved it. I'm Italian. I grew up eating lasagna with cheese and I just love cheese. Cheese is super addicting, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. But it was difficult for me to give it up altogether at first until I started to feel so flippin' amazing that I don't want to eat anything anymore that doesn't make me feel good. Why would I want to do that to myself? So understanding that dairy is highly allergenic, dairy causes inflammation. It's a very, very inflammatory food. And inflammation is the root cause of disease in the human body. So anytime you're adding something in there that's causing inflammation, you are making yourself more susceptible to a disease, or you're exacerbating an existing condition. So you can be turning on and off problems for yourself based on what you're eating. And dairy is a big one. The reason why they will say the FDA or the Dietary Council, the reason they say not to give milk or dairy to children under 1 year old is because they know that dairy is linked to type 1 diabetes. So whenever you hear that there is no known cause of type 1 diabetes, there actually is a known cause. Whether or not dairy actually causes it, or dairy turns on the gene that causes the person to be unable to produce insulin, it's dairy is what is causing that disease to turn on. Okay, so whenever you hear that something is genetic, keep in mind that there are foods that can trigger genes to turn on and off. And so you can be triggering a disease and you'll think it's genetic because you may have a genetic predisposition for something. That doesn't mean you have to get it. You can not allow that gene to turn on if you don't eat the things that cause it to turn on, the things that cause inflammation. And, every person's body is different. So in your body, that inflammation might end up causing, seasonal allergies. And for someone else, it might cause, to turn on the gene for diabetes, something like that. So just bear that in mind, that diet has everything to do with health. Everything. Keep in mind that you don't hear a lot about this from your doctor because your doctor's not trained in nutrition. Western medicine is not about health. It's about taking care of people that are already sick. That's the entire way the model is set up, is that you go to the doctor with a complaint, they diagnose you with a problem, and they give you a treatment. They don't say to you, well, we can prevent this or reverse it by changing what you're eating. They don't come out and start telling parents when their children are very little that, we should not be eating dairy. They're really not allowed to say that. They have some pretty strict rules and regulations, and it doesn't necessarily have to be based on what's healthiest. It has to be based on what will they get sued if they say. And the lobbyists are extremely powerful. So you're never going to hear all of this at your doctor's offices, which is why I highly encourage you to do your own research. So that being said, I'm going to go to some different issues that have come up in my family through the years and how changing our diet has helps those issues. So one of them is one of my sons, who is now 18 years old. He's a twin, and when the twins were little, he was the one that was sick all the time. He had chronic ear infections. We would have him on antibiotics for months at a time, just one round after the other, because these ear infections would just never, ever go away. He constantly had upper respiratory things. He was just always sick. And eventually they had to put tubes in his ears. Well, had I known what I know now, he would never have had tubes in his ears. But I didn't know what else to do. Here's my child suffering. He's now 3 years old. He had low-pitch hearing loss because of the fluid that just sat in his ears for years on end. And they said, I'm just watching him suffer and be in pain all the time. And so we got him ear tubes, which did nothing. He ended up still getting ear infections all the time, very, very painful ones. So the ear tubes for my son really did not help. And then it was to the point where they were going to send him to get his tonsils and adenoids taken out. That was the next step they were going to do. And thankfully, the day that the doctor told us that, and they put him on yet another antibiotic, he had been up all night. He couldn't sleep because he was in so much pain. He was probably, I'm going to say he was 5 years old at the time, something like that. And he was just up all night in pain, couldn't sleep because of the pain. And it was just heart-wrenching to see your child sick all the time. So they said, we got to take out his tonsils and adenoids. And I was just like devastated that this poor baby had to go through another surgery. And on the way back from that appointment, I had an appointment with my chiropractor. And he had taken care of some issues that I had had over the years from a car accident I had been in, and realigned my spine, and I stopped having the back spasms and the headaches and the wickedly bad seasonal allergies that I had been suffering from ever since the car accident. Those cleared up after going to the chiropractor. And so I was relaying to him, my son's issue. And again, I still didn't hear anything about diet, but he did say, would you let me adjust your son? Before you go taking him to have him, sedated anymore and cut open anymore, let's adjust him. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So he adjusted him, and right there on the chiropractor table, my son's ear drained. All the fluid drained out of his ear. He was out of pain. We didn't fill that prescription. He never needed it. And he never had another ear infection ever again. However, he did still have some upper respiratory things he was still the sickest kid in my house. So eventually I learned what I learned about dairy and removed the dairy. And now he doesn't have those symptoms anymore. They have cleared up significantly by switching to almond milk, by getting cheese out of the house, which I know is difficult. But again, I'm going to go back and tell you in a few minutes about cheese, and then maybe you won't be quite so addicted to it anymore. And my youngest son has several issues, including bedwetting. Bedwetting has been a problem for him. He is 9 years old now, and he also he has behavioral issues, ADHD, and a few other things. And so I had been researching and reading about these issues, and the doctors had attempted different things. They put him on a medication that is supposed to be, I believe, a blood pressure medication, and they were off-label using it to help my son with his bedwetting. Well, it didn't do anything. It didn't help at all. And so eventually I took him off of it because I'm like, why am I putting drugs in my child that may have long-term side effects, and it's not helping anyways? So after doing research on ADHD and then bedwetting, both things came up with dairy as a possible issue. So I decided that my son needed to have dairy removed from his diet. And so I did that, and the bedwetting has stopped. He still will have an occasional accident, like maybe once a month, but before it was literally every night, and he's 9. So every night he would have to wear a pull-up, and sometimes he would wet through the pull-up, and we didn't seem to have any way of slowing this down. It was just every single night. And now that we've taken the dairy out, that is not a problem anymore. It's occasional, which is normal for a 9-year-old. And the symptoms of the ADHD are lessened. He can remain calmer. It's not causing inflammation in his body anymore that his body has to deal with, so his body can work on functioning. See, our bodies want to be healthy. Our bodies are meant to be healthy. When we cut ourselves, it heals, right? Bodies are made to be healthy and to be able to heal and deal with illnesses, toxins, things like that. The problem is when we are daily dumping toxins into our bodies through eating a standard American diet, our body doesn't have time to recoup from that and begin the healing process before we're dumping in more toxins. And that is that is why I do what I do. That's why I come out here and say these things and talk to people. So you're hearing it from somewhere, because we don't hear this. It's not in the mainstream media. Your doctor doesn't know, because that's not what they're trained to do. Doctors are trained to diagnose existing diseases and then give you a medication to treat it, or a surgery to treat it. They are not trained in prevention, and they are not trained that nutrition can far better solve a problem than a drug can. For example, my son's bedwetting. The drug did literally nothing to slow it down, to change anything that was going on, and removing dairy had an immediate effect on my son no longer bedwetting. So that's just a couple of examples from my life of what I have seen happen in my own family when I remove these foods that are highly allergenic and highly inflammatory. So cheese. Let's talk about cheese real quick. I know it's delicious, you guys. Believe me, I know. Like, I ate it for most of my life and I enjoyed it too. And when it was, lactose was a problem for me, I found ways to find lactose-free cheese because I really wanted to eat it. It's so good. But let's talk about why cheese is so good and why we're so addicted to it. So, first of all, understand, because I found out recently that two different people that I was talking to did not know this, and I was shocked. I thought everybody knew this. I thought it went without saying, and that I never had to bring it up, really. And we were just in casual conversation. I said, well, of course you know that dairy comes from lactating cows, from pregnant cows. And they were like, wait, what? Like, the cow has to be pregnant to make that? Like, they just never thought about it before. They're like, well, cows make milk. Right, cows are mammals. Mammals make milk when they are pregnant or nursing an infant. That's what mammals do, including humans. We lactate when we are carrying a baby or when we have a newborn that we need to feed. We don't lactate when we're not having babies, and neither would a cow. Cows are kept pregnant. They're inseminated regularly to keep them pregnant, to keep them lactating so that they can produce enough milk to feed the masses. So understand, first and foremost, that there is no such thing as hormone-free milk. It is a hormone-laden substance by the mere fact that it is full of estrogen because the cow is either pregnant or just had a baby and is lactating. So I want everybody to get that fact and understand it. Cows only lactate because there's a baby that they need to feed. That's the only reason. And every mother who lactates has hormone surges that cause the lactation, okay? And that ramp up throughout the pregnancy. The estrogen gets higher and higher throughout the pregnancy. Dairy milk, cow's milk, is linked to prostate cancer and other reproductive cancers. It's known to exacerbate or cause these cancers. It's a hormone-ridden product. So regardless of how you think you're getting raw milk, if you are, because I know a lot of people will defend, well, raw organic milk is not the same as processed pasteurized milk. Sort of, yes, but all milk comes from a pregnant cow. Okay, so all milk is going to have those pregnancy hormones in it. That's just a fact. What happens is for most of America, like 99% of the dairy that you purchase came out of a factory farm. So it's full of other things. And the reason why is, first of all, they want the cow to produce faster, so they keep her artificially inseminated. Second of all, in factory farms, the animals are kept in very, very close proximity because space is important. The more cows you can fit into a smaller space, the more money you can make and the more milk you can produce. So they're kept in a tiny space. So because of that, they get diseased very easily. So they are also full of antibiotics. So you can occasionally find organic, antibiotic-free, grass-fed, but most cows that are dairy cows are on a factory farm. So they are fed antibiotics to keep them from getting sick, and they are not fed their natural diet. They are not allowed to roam. They are kept while they're pregnant, they're kept in a cage that they can't even turn around in. They stand there, and that stress causes ulcers and other things. So the cows, and because the cows are fed corn, which is not their natural diet, they develop disease. So they have to be given medications. So, cow's milk is full of all kinds of toxins, okay? So let's get that out of the way. Now let's get to cheese. How do we make cheese? Cheese is made by concentrating down cow's milk and removing the liquids, and so you're left with a solid. The same way you would make a raisin by drying a grape, which removes all of the moisture. And you know that when you have dried fruit, well, you should know this, but I'm telling you, dried fruit has more sugar than, like, a raisin will have more sugar than a grape because the raisin's the concentrated solids that used to be in this bigger grape. So this little raisin's going to have as much sugar as this big grape did. So when you look at it by volume, there's a lot more sugar in a dried fruit than there is in the natural fruit itself. So same thing happens with cheese. So all those hormones and things are concentrated down. Well, there's another hormone in milk that it's in every type of milk. Every mammal has it, and it's an opioid. It's there to keep the baby coming back for more, especially in a species where the baby could get up and walk away relatively quickly after birth. There has to be a reason for that baby to come back and nurse. Otherwise, it's not going to thrive. It's going to wander off into the woods to play, forget about coming back to eat, and die of starvation. So so God had this plan to make sure that the babies would continue to be fed, and so the species would thrive. So there is a mild opioid effect in milk. In cow's milk, it's meant to keep a baby cow, not a human, a baby cow, coming back for more. And this is in every mammal that lactates. They all have this opioid in the mother's milk. So again, when you make cheese, you are concentrating out the liquids and making a solid, okay? And you're shrinking down everything into a smaller package. So you just took the opioids that were floating a little bit in the milk and you squished them all down into the cheese, and now you have exacerbated that opioid. That's why cheese is so addicting. It actually is an addictive substance. I'm not saying it's like anything close to like cocaine or anything, but there is an actual opioid effect. So cheese is an addictive substance, and that is what makes it so hard. They've done studies when they've changed people's eating to figure out why it's so difficult for people to stick to a diet. And the biggest thing that comes back that people have a hard time giving up is cheese. More so than sugar, more so than, salt or oily, fatty things. Cheese has a lot of fat in it, and it has a lot of salt, but it also has that opioid effect, which is what keeps you coming back for more. So, why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because several times in the last week, I've seen people go through my social media feeds whose children are in need of ear tubes or having tonsils out. And I was there. I get it. Your child is suffering and you just want the suffering to stop, and no one's told you that there's another way. And so I want to tell you that there's another way. So with my son, he did have ear tubes, and I'm sorry that happened, and I'm sorry that I didn't know ahead of time what I know now, because he would have never needed them. And once I did find out how to take care of him through chiropractic care and through dietary changes, we didn't need any more surgeries. We didn't have any more illnesses and ear infections, and no more antibiotic need. So I would encourage you, if you have a child who seems to be chronically getting upper respiratory problems, who's got a runny nose all the time, or seems to have allergies or something, just try removing milk for 2 weeks. It's absolutely not going to harm your child, and you can, because you can get everything that you can get in an animal product as far as nutrition you can get from a plant. Everything. Without the harmful problems, without the inflammation, without the hormones, the antibiotics, the heme iron, all the other things that are present in cholesterol, all those other things that are present in animal products. You don't need them, and you can get the nutrients that you need from plant-based products. So it will absolutely not be harmful to your child to take them off of dairy for a couple of weeks. You can replace with fortified milk, plant-based milk, almond milk, soy milk, cashew milk. Find a milk that your child likes, and just switch for 2 weeks and see what happens. Just because to me, it makes no sense to put ourselves through being on medications and having surgeries and having side effects. It's still one of the most dangerous things to do. One of the leading causes of death in this country is medical mistakes. So any surgery that you can avoid having, any medication that you can avoid being on, you're safer from that leading cause of death. So definitely removing milk is not going to be a cause of death, and it doesn't cost you anything. It's not like, medical copays, surgeries, lost time from work, medication, things you got to pay for like that. There's none of that. It's far less expensive. It's non-invasive, which is always better. And, you may find that you or your child or whoever in your life is struggling, their symptoms are relieved by just eliminating an inflammatory food. And dairy is one of the most inflammatory. That's why I'm talking about dairy today. There are others as well, but start there. Like if you have seasonal allergies, start there. My seasonal allergies are so calmed now. I do still get them occasionally, depending on where, like when I go out to my cabin, I might need to take like a Zyrtec or something, but I don't need allergy shots anymore. I don't need any other prescription medications, inhalers, all those other things, which do have side effects. If you ever read the side effect on one of your medications, you would be like, it's terrifying. You're risking 27 other illnesses to take care of one, and some of them are pretty dangerous. So for me, if I can eliminate a food group that I don't need, that's not good for me anyways, and replace it with healthier things that don't cause me problems, then why would I not do that? So that is what I want to be sharing, and I'm going to be on here regularly sharing these things with you guys. And like I said, please research. Don't just take my word for it. Go and research. And you can Google dairy and ADHD, dairy and seasonal allergies, dairy and ear infections, dairy and bedwetting. You can go Google that. You're going to find tons of information. And there are peer-reviewed studies on this that are, the cream of the crop, like Cadillac of studies that will show it's an inflammatory food. It does contribute to health problems, including allergies, asthma, migraines, prostate cancer, bedwetting. Like there's so many things that can be type 1 diabetes. There are so many things that can be controlled or eliminated or reversed by changing what you eat. And it's so much better for you than being on drugs that have side effects. So please think about this. If there's somebody in your life that you know might benefit, show them this video. Go Google it yourself and find your own information. Don't just take my word for it. And just try it. Do a couple of weeks with no dairy and just see what happens. I bet you will feel better. That's all I have for today. Thanks for tuning in. Please like and share if you found this helpful, and subscribe, and I would really appreciate that. And have an awesome day.